Well, hello. Today we're not going to have the general stream we would have. There is streaming if you want to join. Because I don't have time and my kid is ill. And so I don't want to spend 2 hours explaining some stuff. And I need 2 hours for the next section of the AURORA. Sorry. I saw a reel of a Indian classical music player. Basically just uses one finger to do everything. But so I've got obsessed with that, and that you may hear that from time to time. It's fun, but it does seem like an unnecessary obstacle in playing. So today what I'm going to be doing is talking to you about broadly structure, okay? And I know we've been talking about structure. What would you say needs to be recovered about structure? Well, there's something we haven't really talked about. It's the kind of broader outline. It's all fine to think in verses and choruses and things like that, but we can think about things with a little more blur in the eyes, and if we have that blur, then things look a little bit different. Specifically, we can be a little broader with what we determine as the first section. We don't need to think of it as, you know, the intro plus then the verse and then the pre-chorus and the chorus, okay? All those things happen. If we were thinking really specifically, we could think of that as an A, a B, a C, and a D, okay? But that's, all right, sorry, I'll do it for you. A, B, C, and D, okay? But that is unnecessarily specific for some ideas, and it sort of leads to more distinction being made between songs than cohesion, than similarity. So what I thought would be a good idea today is to go over the more blurred, larger models that are apparent in AURORA's work. And it turns out there are a few which are really, really common. The most common of which by miles is the AABA structure. Now, you may be wondering how many could possibly have this structure. Well, of the how many songs is it? Something like 88 songs that I'm looking at on this. Let's take away 2 of that, so 86, because 2 of them are like Runaway level 2 and Wolf Walker's Running with the Wolves, so we don't need to think about those have the same structure as their predecessors. But of those 88, 33 have an AABA structure, okay? This is on a broad scale, so what this really entails is they have some kind of intro and a verse and a chorus, maybe with some other stuff in there as well, but that's our A section. Then the next A section, okay, we don't have an intro, but maybe we have an interlude going in, whatever, maybe it just comes in straight with the next verse, but either way, it's material we've had before, right? So we're going from like this mix of verse and chorus as this one block structure to another mix of verse and chorus as the second block of A. Then most of these songs will go to some new material after this. This is true across other models actually as well. Generally we get 2 A sections, 2 verse chorus, and then after that we get a bridge, or we get a coda sometimes, but in an AABA structure it's not a coda next, it's always a bridge or some new material in some other way that we could think. We could be a breakdown where everything drops down very low, or it could be an instrumental, though sometimes instrumentals actually repeat the music from the verse or from the chorus. So there are occasions where that's not actually really new material, that's just old material done in a new way, and so we would think of that as another A. There's one example of that basically. maybe 2. But yeah, in this AABA structure, we've got verse, chorus, bridge, and then some level of verse and chorus to finish off with. That's our last A. Often that A is a lot more blurred, a lot more different than the first 2. Let's give an example, shall we? What shall we have a look at? Oh, why not? Let's just, Runaway is one of these, right? So, right, so we've got Runaway. Intro is basically that, okay? A few times. And then, okay, so that's our verse. We get another one of those. That's fine. That's part of our A section. Okay, and then we got our pre-chorus. Same thing again. Okay, now we're into our chorus. And then the first time this chorus is really short, followed by the post-chorus. I can't take it anymore. And then we go into our next A section, straight into another verse. Oh, why do I keep messing that up? Don't know. Okay, and then we have a slightly different alteration of the verse, don't we, with a different melody. So lots of different melody there, but it still feels very like the verse. Lots of signifiers that it's still the verse. So it doesn't feel like super new material. Another pre-chorus. And we're into the chorus again. And this time it's longer with this I got no other place to go on the end, right? You get the same thing. Take me home, take me home, no other place to go. I can't take it anymore. So then we get that post-chorus again, but after a little bit of time. All that is our second A section. Okay, we've heard almost all that material before, and the material we haven't heard before is couched within a very familiar framing of the verse. Okay, then we get. And I kept running for a soft place to fall. Oh, and I kept running for a soft place to fall. And I kept running. It's very early here. For a soft place to fall. I kept running for a soft place to fall. So that's our B section. We've not heard any of that before. It's very integrated by itself, but it's not connected to any of our previous sections. So that's our B section. Quite short in comparison, but still of equal material weight, if you like. And then after that we get finally a very, very short pre-chorus, which nonetheless leads back into our chorus, and then we get a lot of choruses after that. Trying to stop myself being rude. We definitely get a lot of choruses after that, and all those choruses eventually lead to our final post-chorus bit as well. Okay, and we end on the post-chorus. So you can see that the end set, pre-chorus, chorus, post-chorus, all of that is material we've heard before. Now we do elaborate the melody in the chorus. Oh, take me home, home where I belong. No, no. Oh, take me home, home where I belong. Yeah. Oh. Right? We give it some of that, but it's still the same words, same accompaniment. The accompaniment changes from chorus to chorus, but it connects this chorus with itself. So there we go. So that's an AABA structure, and that is the most common thing by far, basically a third of the material. Okay. A little variation of that is where we get a coda on the end. So this would be then an AABAC, so new material being thrown on the end. So an interesting example of that might be Through the Eyes of a Child, but I think that's actually a little misleading, because that coda is actually pretty hefty. It's really a big section. But something like Winter Bird might be more appropriate. So after the final chorus in Winter Bird, up till that point, it's absolutely been as we would expect it to be in an AABA structure, and then the last moment we get this all I need is to remember how it was to feel alive. Something like that. I can't quite remember how the melody goes there. It's similar to that, but after we've had can't remember what key it's in either, annoyingly. Let's do the my tears are always frozen. My tears are always frozen. Pretty sure this is not the right key, but whatever. After that we get this. All I need is to remember how it was to feel alive. I need to remember how it was to feel alive. Okay. So that little tiny bit is just a coda added onto the end. It's irrelevant, disconnected to the other material. It's just this new thing that happens at the end. Okay, we have quite a few of those. Little Boy in the Grass does the same thing. Through the Eyes of a Child does a similar thing. Gentle Earthquakes has a massive percussion bit at the end, which I would say is equivalent. In Bottles has a similar thing. Secret Garden has a similar thing, and we haven't covered it yet, but Starvation has a different thing, a similar thing. Animal has almost that kind of thing, but Animal's coda is actually more connected to the bridge, actually, because it's the the bridge, as we see it in Animal, is a lot of saying animal over and over again. I'm an animal. Well, something like that, isn't it? Anyway, we stop on this chord, and then there's that bow, 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 bow. And why am I struggling to find the melody there? I'm an animal. Right, so it's just loads of animal. Oh, and then the let me become an animal. Right, but that's more of the bridge proper. The bit that comes before that arguably is a post-chorus, and that is what comes back at the end, where it's just I'm an animal, hunting for an animal, right, just at the end. So we don't get the bridge proper in that one, but we do get some material that we've heard before in the context at the end that's slightly different to an A. You could argue about that one. I would say if you wanted to just see that as a normal AABA, there's a fair reason to do so, but arguably that's beginning of the B section as opposed to the end of the A section. So that's our sort of second likely thing. Another likely thing that really only started on Exist for Love, but already has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 songs conforming to the model. Arguably started with Animal Soul, but Animal Soul was released later. Is an AAB. So this is where we don't have the final A section on the end, and whatever our bridge material is actually just continues to the end of the song. Sometimes this feels like new material, and sometimes it is almost like an alteration of the material that's come before. So in those cases, of which Exist for Love is kind of one, you could see it just as, again, an extension of the A section. So Exist for Love, for instance, ends with where are we? Somewhere here. And then after another chorus, we then get I love you, I love you, I love you, and I love you, I love you, I love you. Right? Which is not material we've heard before, but we've heard that chord sequence, we've heard a lot of the broader textural feel of it has occurred before. Very, very similar to the stuff that came immediately before it. So is that just an elaboration of the thing? Maybe it is. What's a more interesting example of this model then? I mean, you know, a lot of these ones, yeah, I'm not as familiar with. Do I feel confident enough to tackle any of them? Not really, not off the bat. But so, how about some type of skin? So we've covered this recently. Let me just get up the lyrics so I can remember what's going on. Oh no, yeah. To be honest, that's the same kind of thing. I think the outro feels. No, there's. That's not true. Okay, I'm gonna listen to it and then get back to you. Am I? No, it's not important. Anyway. There are certain songs which have that extra thing on the end. Maybe a more salient one would be Giving Into the Love, where again we have a little bit of an alteration of the material rather than new material itself. But it sort of finishes the love, the love, the love, and then it starts again. And then we start again, but we do have new material after that. This kind of new hook that hasn't existed in the rest of the song. So that's like our B section. Again, it bears some resemblance to the previous sections, so there could be an argument made that that's just a continuation of the A. But I like to see it, especially in that kind of case, as because it's new material, it doesn't really matter that texturally it's close to what's come before. We're getting a whole new feel at the end of that song, and so that makes a big difference. So that's our sort of third model, and we have maybe two more classic models. We have a few songs. Actually, it's the second most common type of thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of which are this model, which is just recurrent verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. It doesn't always happen in the same order, but this is what we get in Churchyard. This is what we get in Midas Touch. Midas Touch, one of the smaller models, it really is just two of the same set of thing. Probably the strangest one in this category is Blood in the Wine, and Blood in the Wine sounds quite complicated, and it is to some degree. We've got that beginning hook, right? Okay, again wrong key, but that's the idea. Then we've got a verse which has two parts to it. Yeah, the second part has these strange things and ends with the there's beauty. I'm confusing myself with Beauty and the Beast, right? And then we get the for what I would say is the pre-chorus, which leads us into oh yeah, we're in this key, aren't we? Actually, it's pretty straightforward on the guitar. That's our chorus, okay? So all of that would be an A section, even though we've had loads of different feels in there. And then after that chorus, we go back to a verse. So verse works the same way, pre-chorus works the same way, chorus works the same way. We then get the hook again after the chorus. Now you could see that again as a continuation of the chorus, but the hook actually heralded the beginning of the song. Now, it was in the intro, so again, we don't necessarily need to see it as the beginning of the next section. But either way, after that hook, we then get another chorus. So that's kind of saying our third A section. But that's a difficult distinction to make. You could also connect that to the previous chorus. You could say that that chorus, that hook, and that chorus are all part of the second A section. We then get another hook after that and another chorus after that. So we were really chaining those. Now you could see that as A, and A again, or you could see it as one relatively short A and then one A with a lot of elaboration at the end. And the final thing we get is actually the piano doing the chords for the pre-chorus, and then they just finish, which is fun. It's not new material, so we can't really call it a B, but it's an unexpected end. So there's lots going on in that song under the surface, but actually in the blurred view, it's basically just the same section happening over and over again. Yeah, interesting one. But that's our like, okay, second most common model after AABA. And then AAB would come next, and then AABAC would come after that. Then our last proper model is one that sort of swaps out the final A section for something new. And this is a little bit of a contentious one, and this is maybe why we don't have so many in the AAB category, because once you've got something new after you've had a B section, which is also something new, how do you qualify that next section as something distinct from the B section? How does it become AABC rather than just AA with a massive B? Difficult question, but I think Black Water Lilies would make a good example of how you could do this. Black Water Lilies has some pretty straightforward verse and chorus to begin with. That's even higher than it properly is. Where is it? I think it's here. Under rivers, I'm falling in underwater, I'm falling into the ocean, 1,000 black water lilies. So we do that a few times, and then we have this this relatively short bridge section. Is it around there? I'm getting lost into with all these things that all these things that I've done by the Killers. It's not that, but anyway, it ends with, doesn't it? And then that section is all new that we've just heard, that bridge. So we would call that our B, no problem with that. And then after that we get this big watery space, water lilies, with the kind of thing going on, right? That kind of piano riff is going on there. So that connects it back to the A section, but that is the only thing that does that. And basically this section is really just its own big ambient adjacent section. So it's really, really different to the B section that came before it, and that's why I would say that it's a new section at the end. Things that also seem to have this: inflections of a different kind. All is soft inside. You could argue again. There's a more strong argument there to have just a long B section, but I think it is significantly different. A Little Place Called the Moon is a really good example, because the B section that I've put in here is really just that gargling bit, and which I will not demonstrate again. The gargling bit then sort of emerges into this new finely worded section. Our A sections in this one are just ooh, ooh, etc. But then it's the C section, the final section of the song, which adds this da, 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 section on the end. So so that's why I would see that as an AABC. And then we have two more. The Light Beyond, yeah, you could argue it's a long B section as well. My Body Is Not Mine we haven't covered yet, so I'm not going to talk about that one, but there we are, there's that one. So those are our 5 main models. We have a sort of sub-model, which is the 3-verse beginning, and we have a few of these. The Weight of Missing, again, we haven't talked about. Under Stars has 3 verses, and then it has this quite complicated B section, so I'm tempted to call that a B and a C as well, but you could argue that that's an AABA. It's just got an extra A at the beginning. Same deal with Puppet. Puppet actually has a instrumental, which you could argue is part of the B, but I actually see that as another part of the A, because it is A material. It's all A material. So then we get AAA, and then we get the B, which I would see as the hook in that song, because the third A is a bit of that instrumental. Well, okay, maybe that's the connection. That's a connection to the previous chorus actually. But the third A then is a verse and a chorus with a pre-chorus, happening just as it would for the first 2. So with that one, yeah, clear AABA. We also get some AAABs without that A on the end. So more like the Giving Into the Love model. So these are a different kind of human, just 3 verses and then some new stuff on the end. Devil Is Human, same kind of idea. Echo of My Shadow, Invisible Wounds, also haven't talked about, but yeah, those are all in that kind of thing. After that model, we get the varied ones. We've got 2 that have only 1 verse before a B section and then an A section. These are Hunting Shadows and Artemis. So we know Artemis has a verse and a chorus quite straightforwardly. Okay, and then we have our bandoneon solo, right? That's what we call its chromatic juiciness. And then we come back to basically the same thing that we had at the beginning, but it's at the end now. Double chorus at the end, but basically it's the same deal. It's an A and then a B and then an A. Pretty straightforward. Hunting Shadows also does the same thing, slightly less interestingly. But nonetheless, basically the same blurred model. What else do we have? Mothership and Constellation. Constellation, obviously, very straightforward piece of music, and we worked out it was an AABAC model. Mothership is also kind of in this way. If we see the recurring questions of am I home, or is this home, or this is home, as an A. That's a pretty weak connector, but that is the only connector in Mothership that keeps it from being just a linear progression. Okay. pardon me. And then, then we're really getting into the weeds with these complicated things. One thing two of them do, Your Blood and The Blade, both of these have a delayed chorus. So this means that we get sort of big repetition of a verse and a pre-chorus or a hook, and then we get those verse and hook again, and after two versions of that, then we get the chorus. Now, you could reasonably see that still as one big A, okay? If you don't, it makes the model quite a lot more complicated. So if we see that in Your Blood, for instance, as what's gone on, then we've got a 1A, 1A, a B, and an A, actually. So it ends up being pretty straightforward if we incorporate that late chorus into the first A. If we don't do that, what we get is an A, then the chorus, which is our B, then another A, and then a B again, the second chorus, and then we get a C, which is our sort of bridge material, and then we finally get back to another A at the end. So that makes it a whole lot more complicated. So I would be tempted to see it as an AABA, but I've actually separated it because it has that delayed chorus, and actually it's only one of two, The Blade being the other, which has that delayed chorus. The Blade overall has a lot of different sections. We haven't talked about it, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but this one riff going through the whole thing, so in that way you could actually see it as just one long A. That is a bit reductive, I would say. Quite an interesting one. Okay, The Flood is weird, but we haven't talked about it yet. Now, a especially weird one is some type of skin version featuring Atarashi Gakko, which has some extra sections in it in comparison to the original. That's definitely going to be a fun one to look at. So the two main linear ones are Wisdom Cries, as we know. Wisdom Cries has no repeating material, has a few motifs that are similar, so it has this kind of piano thing that comes in a couple of different sections. But really this is just thing after thing after thing. I've sort of boiled it down to 4 different sections, but realistically, there's that I've only done that to show its comparison to other things, and it doesn't have much comparison to other things. It's an A, B, C, D. Everything goes from A to B at some point, so you could see it, I guess, as sort of similar to Mothership in that respect, that it just goes straight to the B after the A. The Mothership goes back and does something that we've heard before, whereas Wisdom Cries doesn't. And the other one is A Soul with No King, which on the more intricate scale has more repetition, but the repetition gets so detailed and complicated in the later sections that it's actually hard to parse out specific individual sections without making a hugely complicated map. So how I've divided it is that we have this beginning A section with the verses in, and then we have our B section, which is sort of our instrumental section, mainly our violin solo, fiddle solo section, followed by our coda, which is the nothing will ever change, no change, no. Okay, so really we've got 3 separate sections there. We don't have much repetition between them. There is connection between the B and the C, which is that the melody of the violin has some similarity to the melody of the coda at the end there. So there is argument to be made that it's just an A and a B, but that's a bit of a silly thing, I think. Let's see it as an A and a B and C. And what's complicating that is we do get, like, the mandolin riff comes halfway through the B, and that was what signified our A section to begin with. So a difficult one to come up with a fully satisfying understanding of there. Okay, there's that. There is Murder Song. Murder Song is not actually that complicated. It has 2 different sections. One is a how does it go? Kind of some arpeggiated figure doing this kind of thing, right? Da, 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 da. Right, and then the other section is the sorry. Right, so it's got those two sections. We get an A and an A and a B as we would expect, and then after that B we go back to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is what we started with, but then we go to right, which is our B section, or at least B section chords, with a new bit of melody over it. You could argue then that it's a C, but I see it as an elaboration of the B section. And then beautifully we keep that melody as we go back to the original chords. That's a genius stroke. So we get this. As the comes in as well. Really love it. I found out that isn't in the acoustic version, which is tragic. Anyway, then we get a bit more 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on the end, and we get da 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 da, and here I go, which is the pre-chorus, or the maybe the second part of the verse, because we don't arguably have a chorus in Murder Song. Anyway, that's a really interesting one, quite different to the others. The most complicated by miles is Soulless Creatures. It's hard to sum up Soulless Creatures in a sensible way because predominantly of its second verse. The first verse is fine. What do we get? Wow, I'm blanking. Right, that's fine. In fact, probably don't have the third in that, which is interesting. Right, that's our general verse, and we get the and that only happens in the first bit, but I'm not so fussed about that because then we get etc. I'm going to speed this up, but then the main thing is after that chorus we get this. Now you could see that as part of the second verse, and if you do, then this becomes an AABAC. So it's not that odd. But if you don't, if you see that as new material, then we have an AABABACAD. I don't know. If you think that that's appropriate, then go for it. But more likely this deserves to be an AABAC. So overall, the strangest ones: Wisdom Cries, A Soul With No King, Murder Song, Soulless Creatures, if you like, Your Blood, if you like, The Blade, if you like, The Flood, which we haven't talked about, but I've written down AABAC, so that's a bit of an odd one. And Some Type of Skin featuring Atarashi Gakko. Those are our strangest ones with no comparison, no close similar song. Yeah, okay, I hope that has been informative. I know I've actually done 40 minutes, that's loads. I have to go, but yeah, I will be back with more new material soon. I hope that was worthwhile listening. Yeah, have a great day and all the rest. Yeah, bye.